In the next few minutes or so, we're going to be discussing this story, and we'd love to take some of your reaction to it. It's this tale of a delegation of MEPs from Europe who are gathering in Luton today to try and stop the rise of what they consider to be right-wing groups like the English Defence League, where we'll be speaking live to an MEP and also to the leader of the English Defence League, who is live in the studio this morning. And one of the things that this has certainly inspired us to look at in more detail is what is the supposed difference between groups like the EDL and other campaigners who we hear from very often on this programme. Anti-High Speed 2, those who are anti-incinerators, those who are anti the government in terms of the government cuts and the coalition. Maybe they're anti-bankers. Wherever their force is, there are supporters who support their idea. And we wonder whether actually this is trying to stamp out right-wing groups is becoming anti-democratic. And we'll take some of your thoughts on that, particularly about what you hear in the next 10 minutes or so when we talk to both sides of this debate. To 7 minutes past 7 on a Thursday morning. Let's talk more about this delegation of MEPs from Europe who are gathering in Luton today to try to stop the rise of what they consider to be right-wing groups like the English Defence League. They hope to learn from Luton councillors and faith groups like Luton in Harmony about how to control extremist behaviour across the continent. Well, the Labour MEP for Bedfordshire, Richard Howitt, joins us on the line from Brussels, and shortly we'll also hear from the leader of the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson, otherwise known as Stephen Lennon. Morning to both of you. Thank you for joining us live on the programme this morning. If we can come to you, Richard, just first of all, what is happening? Why is there this event happening in Luton today?
Because when the EDL marched in February, there were people there from different European countries, from Denmark, from France, from Germany, and I want to show the people of Luton, who I'm proud to represent, that the vast majority of people across Europe, as well as the vast majority of people in our town, are moderate, support democracy, are against extremism in all of its forms, and that this, to send a very strong statement that those who say this is a special problem in Luton are wrong, because it's a problem not just in Britain but across other European countries, and colleagues like the Austrian MEP who stood out against the neo-fascist who actually went into the coalition government in that country.
Why do you describe it as a problem?
For example, Emine Bozkurt, who's a Dutch MEP, who has criticised the far-right group who are supporting the current coalition government.
Okay, why do you call it, Richard? I don't know if you can hear me, but we've got limited time. Why you refer to it as a problem? I imagine it's only a problem if people are supporting those organisations, and actually, if people are supporting those organisations, perhaps it isn't a problem. It's actually how people feel.
Well, that will be part of what we discuss, but I have to say, when you said in the introduction that you're talking to both sides and that could it be anti-democratic, you said, for us to protest against far-right and extreme groups. I have to say these are not two equal sides. The community of Luton, Luton in Harmony, all of the faith groups, we all stand together against extremism. And it is the right of people to protest in our country, and I do support that, absolutely. But then for the English Defence League to say they're going to invade our meeting with placards, we've got a right to meet together peacefully and to share our ideas together too.
But this is also, presumably, this could be argued as fear on your side. I mean, part of the fear is that 37% of people in this country at the last MEP elections turned out. There are obviously concerns if there are other parties or other groups who are gaining support, whatever the views may be. And when we had the last Prime Minister of this country refer to somebody who brought up the question of immigration as being somebody who is bigoted, clearly there is a feeling that our politicians perhaps are not listening to everything we want to hear and we want to say to you.
Well, I'm proud to have won the European elections in Luton. Altogether 150,000 people voted for me and for the Labour Party.
And what percentage was that?
And I don't deny whatsoever that there are fears about immigration, about people from different countries and different faiths. But what I do say is that many of those fears are misplaced, that those who try to stoke up and exploit those fears to cause hatred are absolutely wrong, and that we together, the MEPs coming to Luton today from 4 different countries at my invitation, we will say very, very strongly that hope will succeed over fear.
Richard, stay with us.
We will come back to you, but let's hear from the English Defence League leader, Tommy Robinson, otherwise known as Stephen Lennon. Tommy, I get the impression you've got a lot to say. You've sat there for the last 5 minutes throwing your hands up in the air.
I have. I'm absolutely appalled by this group. They're coming to talk about halting the rise of the English Defence League. No one's mentioned that last week a Luton Town football supporter was murdered in a bombing by Islamists in Morocco, along with a Dutch citizen, a French citizen. Europeans are being killed. You didn't feel the need to bring European MEPs to Luton when the Stockholm bomber left our town and decided to try and maim and kill on mainland Europe. You didn't feel the need when Scotland Yard published that 25 Lutonians are travelling out to train in Yemen training camps in order to maim and kill as well. You have never felt the need to come to this town to address the real problem. The real problem is militant Islam. We're a symptom of that problem. We wouldn't be here. You want to stop the defence leagues across Europe, which you won't, unless you can identify the problem first off, which is within the Islamic community, and you can deal with that problem. Come in here on your election campaign to get votes, to get yourself re-elected, which is a sad state of affair, which is what it comes down to. That's why you're here. You're here to get your photo taken with the Islamic community and nothing more. You're not here to protect us. You're not here to deal with the problems. You're going to Luton Town Football Club. Luton Town Football Club, the same. All you've addressed this as is coming to stop the rise of the English Defence League. You've now added in this morning that it's extremists on both sides.
Is the English Defence League a racist group?
We are not racist. We have a Jewish...
Then surely you can't be against a meeting that is hoping to stamp out racism.
No, that's what I'm stating. Their meeting wasn't to stamp out racism.
That's what they're coming here for today. They're starting to listen to you. You could say they're starting to work with you. So
all it was billed
why not work with them rather than demonstrate against them?
Because all their meeting was billed as was stopping the spread of the English Defence League in Europe. It's only this morning that they're mentioning stamp out racism. It's only this morning they're mentioning they're going to Luton. I fully support stamping racism out of football. Let's get with the times. Racism has been stamped out of football. You don't need to go and stamp racism out of football anymore. It's gone. It's not here.
I think there is racism still in football, but that's my own personal opinion.
Okay, well, any Luton Town fan will tell you there isn't.
I don't really get the point of the EDL's existence, and I think it's become a little bit muddied in the water as to what the EDL are trying to achieve. What are you trying to do for people listening this morning? Because you're not a political group, because they can't back you in a political way. So we're trying
to pull out strong leadership. We need Winston Churchill's, not Mark Chamberlain's. We need people who are going to stand up, not appease. And all we've seen from this MEP this morning, he's coming here to appease. He's coming here to appease the Islamic community, to tell the Islamic community, we will stop the English Defence League. You will stop us what? Having our democratic right to peacefully protest. We brought thousands of people to Luton. We peacefully protested. What is it about that you want to stop? I know what it is you want to stop. You want to stop us mentioning Islam, which is the problem. Because you don't want us to address the problem, and you're too weak and spineless as a politician to address the fears of our community.
Stephen, stay there, because we do obviously have to go back to Richard Howitt, because Richard, some very clear points were put to you. This is about electioneering, and there were certainly circumstances and events that Stephen Lennon referred to of occasions when you haven't come over here. I think the last comment he made was spineless. Is this all about electioneering? Richard, have you changed the headline of the reason why you're coming and bringing others to Luton?
This was always billed as a meeting against extremism in all its forms. And if the things said by the English Defence League simply mean they identify themselves as part of the problem. There are no European elections for 3 years. I'm not seeking votes today. I'm regularly in Luton. I live and work in my own constituency. We're not meeting one religious group. We're meeting all faith communities, because all faith communities in Luton stand up against racism and extremism.
But just to give you a chance to respond,
I stood out against the Stockholm bomber. I regularly go to the mosques and talk with moderate Muslims and talk about how we can promote moderation in the Muslim community, as in all communities. And yes, we have stamped out racism from the terraces at Luton, but we haven't across the whole of Europe. Every football fan, I'm a football fan, knows that there are European fixtures where still black players are subject to jeers and to harassment, and the fact that we in Britain and Luton have run the campaign Show Racism the Red Card, that's something we want to share with the European MEPs coming from other countries today.
Last and a brief word to both of you. Stephen Lennon, you heard there that obviously, he's refuted some of the points you've made in terms of speaking out against, for example, the Stockholm bomber and racism in football. Just a last word about it before we go back.
Are you going to any other community today, i.e. Farley Hill, i.e. Marsh Farm, i.e. Stopsley, or are you simply going to Bury Park? Please answer the question, because I know where you're going. You're going to Bury Park.
We're going to 3 different venues throughout the town.
2 in Bury Park and 1 at Town.
Stephen, let him come back.
The police have asked us to keep one of those venues private.
It's the coffee pot.
And I really regret that a visit from 4 other countries to showcase the best of Luton and the best of the values of local people is attempting to be hijacked, in their own words, by extremists.
No, you're hijacking our town.
Can
Sorry,
I ask
Richard.
you one question with regards to the EDL and the demonstration today? And people will understand that you want to get your point across, and there is a right to a freedom of speech, but can you guarantee that your protest today will be peaceful?
I can't. The same way I guaranteed our Luton demonstration would be peaceful, and it was. It's all the propaganda against us by people like Richard stating that we're extremists. What's extremist about wanting a stop an extremist ideology, about standing up for women's rights, for gay people's rights? There's nothing extremist about the English Defence League. Just because you don't like our message because it affects your voters and your audience that you'll wish to go to, that you're too spineless to talk about the problem. Why don't you go into Bury Park? Why don't you address the real problem, which is Al Mujahideen, which is the extremists? Why don't you stop being spineless, and why don't you represent the town instead of the Islamic community? That's what you need to do.
Just a last word to Richard Howitt.
I do represent the town and all its communities, and I know that the real problem here is extremism in all of its faces, and that those who want to spread fear and mistrust and hatred to have no place in Luton, and I'm sad to say that one of that set of extremists is the English Defence League.
We have to leave it both there. Thank you for joining us on the studio. Stephen Lennon, Tommy Robinson live from the EDL in our studio, and Richard Howitt from Brussels, who, as you heard there, will be leading a delegation of MEPs from Europe gathering in Luton today to try and stop the rise of what they consider to be right-wing groups. And you heard there from both on the